Responsive design is important, but it can be difficult to make your multimedia files responsive. One of the first things you always want to do, and it's very tempting to just assume that this is responsive, is to set your width of your video files to 100%. Arguably, if you then go in and preview it, it's responding. If the browser window is that wide, the video shrinks. If the browser window is wide, the video gets larger. But if you have a large video that's 1080 by 1920, you're going to be able to expand this window size pretty big, and it's not going to matter. It's not going to fit on the screen on most screens because most screens are smaller than that. But the problem you're going to have is if you have a smaller video, say a 720 by 1280 video, and you're looking at a 5K screen, that video, if you have it set to 100% width, it's going to really look bad all maxed out. So what you want to do is actually go in and say, this has a max width of 1280 pixels. That way, even if the browser expands to larger than the max width, the video stops expanding and the browser can get as large as it needs to get, and the video will stay at the perfect resolution for it. The next thing you want to always make sure to keep your videos responsive is that you use multiple source files, as I mentioned before. But one of the tricks that people don't realize is that you can use media queries to define who gets to see those source files. For instance, you might have a source file of a video that's really small. So you have your Chickadee small MP4 file. And you only want to display that to devices that have a very small screen. So you're going to say media. You're going to use the media attribute, and you're going to give it a value in parentheses of max width 400 pixels. Now these are very small screen devices. Now bear in mind, I always make this mistake. This is not the CSS max width. This is the media query max width. And so there is no semicolon at the end. So you want to make sure you don't include a semicolon there. This is not CSS. This is actually the media query. And what it's saying is, look at this device, and if the device viewing this screen is smaller than 400 pixels, in other words, the maximum width that this video will be displayed to is something that's 400 pixels or smaller in width, then show the Chickadee small video. But you also might have an HD source, so you want to load that. First, we define the Chickadee source, chickadeehd.mp4. And then you give it another media query. So again, it's the media equals. And this time, it's a more complicated media query because you're actually going to look at a WebKit value, WebKit. And that dash at the front is correct. Min device pixel ratio 2. And what that's saying is if the device has a minimum pixel ratio of 2, and that catches most Retina-like displays. And then you also want to make sure that it has an HD resolution. So you want to say min resolution 1920 dpi. And then we'll close the source. And that says to your browser, only display the Chickadee MP4 HD video when it's a Retina screen with a HD resolution. A neat thing you can do in HTML5 with these videos is you can actually create what they call a video background. So I'm going to save this file and create a new file so I can show you a video background. You load your video in the same way you would load it in any other video using the HTML5, but you use a few different attributes. First of all, you don't want to have controls on a video background, so we're going to get rid of those. I'm going to give it an ID because there's only going to be one background on the screen at a time. So this is okay to have an ID, and it's going to be my video background, video BG. And I have my source files, and I want it to preload automatically. That means that it's saying if it gets a chance, please load this file before any other pages so that it's ready to go when the page is fully loaded. Autoplay. This is a time when you do want it to autoplay. And then loop, because most videos that are playing in the background should just keep playing and playing and playing. Muted, because it's annoying enough that it's autoplay. Let's make sure the sound is off. And to make doubly sure that the sound is off, make the volume equal to 0. But that's not what makes the video a video background. What makes it a video background is the styles. So we'll get rid of the styles we have on here, and we're going to set the styles to our video background video, BG. And that's our ID. That identifies it as an ID style selector. And we're going to set the position of absolute, give it a position of top of 0, left 0, min width 100%. And this will stretch your videos to fit the screen, min height 100%, because you want your video to fill up the screen. Then you set the width to auto and the height to auto. The Z index, this is the layer, how it's going to show up on the web page. Just set it to 1000, so it's the very lowest item on the screen, and you want any overflow that there might be because of the size should be hidden. Now, if we've done this correctly, and we have to save our file, so we'll save it as my BG file. If we preview it, as you can see, there's now a video background, and my text is right on top with my little chickadee bouncing around in the frame. And it acts like a regular web page, other than that it's a video rather than a static background image. The last thing we're going to do in this video is show you how to make a YouTube video responsive, because that's the most common place that people get videos, is from YouTube. So first you need to find a video on YouTube. So I'm going to pick out a video from the Inform IT website. And yeah, this one looks good. So I'm going to scroll down, and because I'm putting it on my website, click on the share button and then click on embed, because I'm going to embed it in my website. So I copy this HTML, and if you've already embedded YouTube videos, this is basically the same, and then you paste it into your HTML. Where it gets tricky is that this isn't actually responsive. This is a video and it's an iframe. The way you make it responsive is by putting an element around it, such as the div tag. And then you make the div tag be the responsive element. So I'm going to add a style sheet. And I'm going to style my div to be width 100% and max width of the maximum width should be the width of the video itself. Now the iframe has a width of 560, so you should not have a max width of larger than the iframe that YouTube is sending. So we want to have a max width of 560 pixels, and then you want to set the height to auto. And we'll save this as my YouTube video. The real trick to YouTube videos and making them responsive is you then have to add between 50 and 60% bottom padding to the element. So you give the container, that div, a padding bottom of around 50 to 60%, and then you hide the overflow. It's also a good idea to set the position of this item to relative, just so that the browser knows it doesn't get confused. Then once you have it set this way, any iframe or object or embed tag that's inside that container, you need to give it some styles. So you need to give the iframe a style of absolute positioning, and then make sure that it's set to the top left part of the container. So you want to place it at the top 0 and left 0. Set the width and the height to 100%. And this is not the 100% of the browser window, it's 100% of the div that's containing it. 100%. Then when you save this document, let's preview it in Safari. View, preview in Safari. And we can play our video. And then as you resize the browser, the video gets larger and smaller.
To this course, which prepares you for the LPIC 1 exam 101. My name is Sander van Vugt. I'm from the Netherlands and I have been teaching Linux courses since 1995.
And that's how you add YouTube videos and make them responsive.